It's day 40 of my father fish Endler tank, and I haven't really done much in terms of maintenance. I've done one water change in that time. I think that was a couple of weeks ago. I have scraped the glass twice, and I'll trim some plants. I'll talk about that. I trimmed some plants to deal with a little bit of algae and top off evaporation. That's all I've done for maintenance. I have added, I think, 10 more plants. I raided another tank, took as many as I could. And since then, a number of them have sprouted little babies. They spread by runners. There are a couple down there that you can see. So there's more than 50 some plants in here at this point. It's still looking pretty sparse, but that'll change as they grow in. I don't vacuum the substrate. I don't do anything with it at all. It's not a lot of really bad algae so far, which is great. I have cut some leaves off of the dwarf Sagittaria plants, basically as they started to adapt to the new tank conditions. Their leaves will yellow and they'll start to sort of become translucent, and that's when the algae takes over. So I've trimmed a number of leaves, maybe 20, 30 leaves when they've gotten really, really bad, so it didn't spread too much. The Endlers eat algae. I did scrape left, front, and right sides of the tank on the inside a little while ago. It wasn't too bad. I think that's my third time doing that now. And because the Endlers eat algae, they just swam around the water column eating it, because it was floating around after I scraped it off with a credit card. Okay, so at this point, there are probably 20 some fish in here. The camera doesn't like to focus on the individual fish much. Sorry. So, some of the females got really large. I have more females than males. That's just how these particular Endlers throw their babies, and that's great because that's what I want. I don't want to stress the females out too much. I'm thinking maybe 2 adult males in this tank at a time, tops. A couple of the females were very small, but pregnant from the males that I had in here when I started the tank. So I've got a couple of little fry in here. I've removed the rest of them. And I just keep taking large females out because I don't need a ton of fish in here. It's very low maintenance. It's really easy. I like it that way. And they're going to be old enough and breeding soon enough. This is plenty of fish. So as far as feeding, I've been giving them crushed snails. They have cleaned this tank of snail eggs. I keep a few snails in here so that they will lay eggs, but all the egg sacs I think are gone at the moment. I've been giving them copepods. What else have I given them? Oh, I have decided to continue to feed them dry food occasionally and keep them on it because several people have expressed an interest in these fish. So my plan of going all live with this tank is not going to happen, and that's okay. I haven't changed anything other than I added, this is commonly called giant duckweed or greater duckweed. It's much larger than actual duckweed. I don't remember the scientific name. I've still got the little filter with no filter media in it. I did change from like a hosiery sock to this mesh bag that's much larger, and the sock was trapping too much debris debris. And this is great. So, you know, I kind of blow it off with a turkey baster. I've done that a couple times, but it's not impeding flow. The impeller isn't like grinding the way it was. And I like the flow. It's good. So I'm keeping it. I probably will get a black zip tie to replace the rubber band at some point. I still got scuds in here. They're starting to come out because they realize that the fish can't eat them. And they're starting to hang out in the moss, which is not great because they're going to eat it. So eventually these fish will be big enough to eat an adult scud. I like having the scuds in the tank, particularly since the fish are such great algae eaters. I don't really want a lot of snails competing for the algae. And the scuds are just great little detritus eaters. For the first few weeks they were staying under the sand, and a lot of them are under sand. And as they breed, I think I mentioned in another video, their babies will be small enough for these fish to eat. There's really not much else to say. That's the update. There's a lot more that has to happen with these plants growing in. It'll eventually be nice and thick, and I'll eventually be removing plants, but it's going to be a number of months. I am going to discuss test kits for ammonia, nitrite, and nitrate. I'm not going to discuss the tank any further, so this might be a good time to tune out. I try and help newbies with information about the hobby and troubleshooting issues, and I see what I consider a real over-reliance on test kits. Test kits are extremely useful for a variety of things, no question about it. But they seem to be what is considered a simple way to assess problems in a pretty complex system. And there seems to be a feeling among a lot of newbies that as long as those parameters are in line, your fish are going to be okay. And if you see an issue in one of those parameters and you correct it, then you're good. And that's simply untrue. I mean, first of all, a lot of fish that we keep can handle some pretty high ammonia for a while, not forever. And in addition to that, by the time a fish actually succumbs to ammonia poisoning and dies, there have been so many symptoms that have been missed. I mean, things have just simply not been observed. So there can be problems that arise from this mentality around test kits. I'm not talking about for hardness, alkalinity, things like that. This reliance on those three that are related to the nitrogen cycle, to the point that, other issues aren't even really considered, and you can have problems from this because people are doing massive 50% water changes every day sometimes for a week or more. And obviously there's another problem, because if you're continuing to have high ammonia after that level of water changes, then the ammonia source is in your tank. It's probably you overfeeding, but that's a lot of stress for fish to put them through those water changes. Not all fish. Some fish, don't get too stressed, but it can be very stressful. Then you take it, there's another angle. If you're adjusting fish to a new pH, particularly if it's lower, that can be a real problem. And as you continue to change, make the parameters more unstable with these water changes, you can be making things worse. The issue in your tank may not even be related to ammonia. It could be that you have a really aggressive large species with small fish, and the small fish are stressed out all the time and they don't even really get much food. You might have an autosynclus in your tank, and those are just, as a rule, really hard to keep alive. They're parasites. I'm just scratching the surface here, and there's nothing wrong with test kits. Very beneficial. No reason not to own one, but we have to, if we want to keep fish healthy, we have to observe our fish closely. If we don't, we can't assess things in time to correct them. And, you know, you can test all day long, but if you don't learn healthy behavior, swimming behavior, breathing behavior, eating behavior, pooping behavior, breeding behavior, if you don't know what these things look like, then you can't properly assess issues. So that's my beef with test kits in the hobby. It really does relate to newbies, although, well, no, it doesn't, because one of the first things out of a lot of more experienced fish keepers' mouths with a newbie is, have you tested? And even when the issue presented doesn't seem to indicate any problems with ammonia. Have you tested the water? And I think that that reinforces it. You know, I think that it's helpful to really stand back. If you're the type of person who immediately tests water when you have a problem, okay, but, you know, maybe stand back and think about what someone who is not yet familiar with healthy fish behavior, how they're going to maybe over-rely on that.